Welcome to Mentor Time. Today, I hope will be a fun topic for you. It was fun for me to find out how I've not been doing as much as I should. We're going to talk about LinkedIn, both recommendations and endorsements, and how they help you and help your colleagues, something that I think we forget about. I want to do a Slido poll so you can either use the QR code on your device, phone, or tablet, or you can go to slido.com and join. The join number is 3267147. And let me know which, if any of these features, this is multiple choice, you can add one or more. Okay, none of these for some of you. I'm going to also do the Slido poll. Thanks to everybody who's engaging. So it looks like almost everybody's done. And I'm not surprised about this. We mostly forget about it. You'll see actual stuff that I've filled in the last few years or decade and a half that I've been on LinkedIn. And I forget about things like last year, I was on a group where we did endorsements once a month, helped others out. But I realized I hadn't done it probably since last year. So, yes, it happens to all of us. Thank you. Thanks, Nada, for that. I appreciate it. Here's the agenda. We always have 3 parts to these meetings. The first will be recommendations, endorsements. I'll tell you what they are and what the difference is. Then we're going to talk about why should you want to do both, or why should you do both, and when and how do you do these? And we always end with what should you do and steps that you can take forward. So as we get started, I want to just remind you all that this is part of your professional presence and professional development. And we don't always take advantage of LinkedIn. It's very common for me to have people work with Ron and me in the course, and then they go back to their busy lives and we hardly see you around LinkedIn. And that's what I expect. And I know that's why we did the course, to get you up to a certain level, just to get your profile where you can engage, because you don't have time to live on it the way I do. And I don't do the living on it that some of the really big LinkedIn experts do. So let's start with recommendations. I think it's pretty clear to people, but I want you to see these are all of the recommendations I have, eight of them, starting in 2007. But actually, it didn't pick up again till 2022. I didn't ask for recommendations usually, but I just want you to see that this is something that most people don't have a lot of. You're not expected to have 40 or 50 or 100. And I just gave you a closer view. It doesn't have to be long. You'll see Lisa's again, but Lisa and I were in the same group. I reached out to her by private message, gave her some information, and told her I'd help her out. So there are all sorts of ways you can write them. Endorsements, on the other hand, I want you to see what they are and where they come from, because it's really, LinkedIn is notorious for not being consistent in naming. Just like connections means everybody we think, but there's still the first level and second level, which is following, and then they call it followers. Same things with endorsements. Endorsements means skills that you're endorsed for, meaning I know the skills that you have. For example, I've used Peter before. We actually did a webinar on this in December 2021. You'll see some information from then. So this is what skills look like now. And as you may remember on your LinkedIn profile, now LinkedIn shows your top 2 skills, which you can reorder and put your priority skills there. But now also, just so you all know, it is possible now to have 100. This is my 100 skills, not 50. They've added them. Why are they doing this? Not because they know we want a lot of skills. They're doing it because they can sell recruiters, sell salespeople to use Sales Navigator and Recruiter, both of those expensive products, to use skills as criteria rather than searching for search terms that may not be consistent. So that's why they've increased it to 100. So when we look at Peter's skills now, this is what we see, that he's got skills and he's put in where he used that skill, meaning I can tell that he's got them in his experience section. And you can see that he has a couple right up top that no one's endorsed him for. Not a problem. Most people don't even think about this. But this is what Peter's skills looks like. A lot of them. I think this was the first full page I could see. And when we look at a section of them, these were just below his top 2 skills. You can see that there are clearly places that he's used these skills. And so even without endorsements, because skills are now linked to your jobs, recruiters and hiring managers will get a lot of information about you. So endorsing for me and why it's helpful is I have always thought of skills endorsements as crowdsourcing. This is what people think they know about you, think you are, what they do know about you, except for the people who early on when these came out were endorsing me for epidemiology. And I am not an epidemiologist, I'm an evaluator. But anyway, I will tell you that it is clear when you start seeing 24 people endorsed Peter for public health, me among them, then it's clear that's something that he does. All right, so that's what those 2 categories are. So why are we going to do them and when and how? I want to take you back to the professional brand model that I've gone over in MentorTime a couple times. It's in the course. If you haven't seen it, basically it separates out what is on your side of the conversation from the way you are known. Now, reflected visibility, for me, that is recommendations. Those are people that know you pretty directly, would recognize your name. Those are the people who probably would write a recommendation for you. And how you are known, your general reputation, is where I see endorsements falling. Where people know about you, when they endorse you, they're going to endorse you for things like, oh, I know Nada does something with tropical diseases. Oh, I know she does parasitology. So that's the kind of thing that I want you to think about as you look at why these are different. So here's what recommendations include. And recommendations definitely have 2 different perspectives. This pinkish color are all people who I would categorize as using my services, mentees, people who took my course, as opposed to those who are in yellow. These are colleagues who do things similar to what I do or work in the same area. Like the very first one, Mark was the VP for finance. I was the VP for research and technical development in all of our technical areas decades ago. So you need to understand what you're being asked to provide as a recommendation or when you want to ask someone to do a recommendation. Generally, recommendations have a focus to them, which may be a service you provide, a particular value you provide. So going back to Sandra Wise, Sandra wrote a nice evaluation for me. Here's how you find it. You go to the recommendations section, and the first thing, if of the person who you want to write a recommendation for, I'm sorry, I should have started with that. You can see that I'm in Sandra Wise's profile, and you click on recommend Sandra. Now, I love that LinkedIn is finally making these things easier because it didn't used to be this easy to do. It has 3 things. 2 are drop-down boxes. So first, what's your relationship? And since I looked at this a year or more ago, the drop-down list actually, it includes mentoring, it includes teaching, it includes studying together. It's great to have all these different categories. And then what her position was at the time. And you notice she has an in-career transition opportunity for me to use as a drop-down. And then you can fill in as much of the box as you want. Endorsements, I actually have some history on. And I call 2012 to 2017, as far as I could figure out, the heyday of endorsements. And if I actually had the time this weekend, I would have analyzed. I have many endorsements. You can see some of them go back to 2012, 2013. But this is just a quick view of people's first names and what they endorsed me for. And on the right, you can see what the page looks like. I've hidden columns for their profile and their last name. You can download this in the download that you get out of taking out your LinkedIn data. It comes as a CSV file, which you can open in Excel and look at it. But people can endorse you for more than one thing. So it's not like a recommendation where they're probably writing about one larger service or area. So they can, in my case, I have my top 5 skills are mostly mentoring and are public health and global development. Now, I found yesterday that I had actually kept screenshots from someone who's a friend who I went to her profile because we were starting to work together. She wanted some mentoring. And so this is 2016, and Marcia does have those skills. This is the kind of thing when you logged on someone's profile, LinkedIn would give you. And some of you may be old enough to remember when they would give you 4 profile photos with names and say, do you want to endorse all these people for this or whatever? They were trying to get you to endorse. Now, you didn't have to you didn't have to take what they put up there. And in fact, I didn't. That's why I have this. I sent it to Marcia to tell her. So I kept some of what they had for her, but I added the things that I knew were important for her to emphasize that she would want to. Fast forward, after 2017, endorsements went away, meaning they weren't front and center every time you logged onto someone's profile. But I did a webinar, I did a MentorTime on endorsements. And I had this screenshot of Lynn Williams. At that time, they were asking for like the recommendation. How do you know, Lynn? Is she good at this? And the reason they did that is because your skills list also included categories of people who endorsed you, not just the names. So you could click on highly skilled in public health, and I think I showed up under that one. Mutual connections, I would show up because I know a lot of the same people that Peter does. This is back to Peter's list. They were asking us to do work so they could provide value for us. But guess what? They've taken it away. Either people aren't using it or they thought it was too much work. They linked in. Because when I looked at this last week, again, these are Peter's skills that we just saw before. You can see public health. I had endorsed him for that, but it doesn't even say endorsed by you and others. It just, and this is his detailed list. But it's very easy now. Guess what? You click one button to endorse someone. Here's the thing you have to remember. You can only endorse a first level connection. So I'll mention more about that when we talk about having a LinkedIn party. All right, now we're on to what does this mean for you? So let me just remind you, here's a little put together the branding photo of your professional brand and where endorsements fall and where recommendations fall. And if I didn't make it clear before, I'm going to make it clear with this. You need both of these. Recommendations are not a numbers game. You need to have a recommendation every so often so it keeps up to date. There are recruiters who will look for recommendations. But endorsements is more about a numbers game. Not that you need to chase them, but you have the opportunity. And it's actually, in many ways, easier to do once you find out how to get there. And I'm going to show you. You need to prepare yourself first. Of course, Sue's going to say, make sure your LinkedIn profile's up to date. Importantly, especially for endorsements, add the 5 skills LinkedIn lets you add to your About section. Those should be the things you are known for, that you want to be known for, that you want to be recognized for. And don't forget to add skills to every job. Now, I had someone who finished the course recently, I recommend 5 to 10, but LinkedIn now doesn't show them all to you when you look at experience. They usually show you three and say plus a few other skills. You don't need to get every single skill at every level. It's like your resume. Think about the ones that are important because those are the ones that will be searched on. Now, this person had a very good point because she's a founder of an important platform for working. And there's a lot she does as a founder, and there's a lot she does as the person who has to take care of the platform, more of the technology. So there's a reason that she had a lot more than 10 skills. In terms of endorsements, now we're on step 2. You're going to have yourself a party. What I mean by having an endorsement party is take some time. It should only take about 10 minutes to do 4 or 5 people. Find some colleagues you'd like to endorse, like Ron. I made up most of these other names. And then identify 3 to 4 skills. Don't just endorse people for one. Try to do it at least 3, if not 4. Here are the kinds of skills. Let's take Ron. Ron, I'm going to endorse him because I know him. So I'm going to go and endorse him directly. Now, the reason I put this messaging with Sandra up here is LinkedIn notifies you when someone endorses you. And it says, Sue, Ron endorsed you for mentoring and 3 other skills. And you can't find 3 other skills until if you want to go through, I've never gone through my individual skills trying to figure out what they did. So you want to keep track of what you endorsed him for, because then you need to send him a DM telling him what you endorsed him for. Now, in this case, if you don't know someone very well, I've also written to people and say, I want to endorse you, but I don't know which 3 to 4 skills you want to focus on. If their LinkedIn profile if it's not apparent to me and I need some help there. So don't be afraid to use LinkedIn DMs to let people know you'd like to endorse them. You're setting this up so you can ask for it in return. Thank you, Nada, for that. I'm glad you like that idea. You've had your party. You've given a party. Now it's your turn. And it's okay to ask for an endorsement. You want to message people and say, and you can do it right after you send them a DM saying, I just endorsed you. You can write it, and I don't, for some reason, don't have a message saying something like this, but I would say, I'd appreciate it if you would endorse me for the following 3 skills if you feel comfortable doing so. So now I did not mention earlier, and because I skipped by my messaging notes, I always felt like I wouldn't endorse someone if I didn't have evidence of their work. So I either knew their work or saw them giving value through comments and posts on LinkedIn where I can see that they know what they're talking about. When someone says, please endorse me for business development, and I have no idea if they're any good at bringing in funding, I'm going to be really careful about it because ultimately it still goes back to you and your reputation. But you can message them asking them to endorse you and then forget about it because they may do it or they may not. So it's not hard to message people and ask, and probably identify 4 or 5 people that you think would be responsive and do it right away. And then immediately when LinkedIn, usually within a day, you will get a notification from LinkedIn saying, Sue Griffey endorsed you, Ron, for mentoring and 3 other skills. Say thank you very much and tell them what the skills were, like I did with Rosemary, who did tell me what skills. She said she did the ones I gave her, but she told me as well. All right, recommendations. It's not that hard to write a recommendation, but I want you to think about something I say all the time. You're going to take the time to write something for someone you know or who's been very helpful to you that you want to recognize. But this person, it was okay that she asked me. We had only worked together, I would say, 1.5 sessions. She reached out to me. I gave her a little help, and then she reached out once more. She wrote me and said, would you write me a recommendation? And she had one sentence in there, which really didn't make a lot of sense, even when I went back and listened to the recording of our meeting, about what I could exactly write for her. So I had to write back and say, you need to draft me the key points you want me to emphasize. She gave me much more about the way she would have written a resume or a cover letter rather than a recommendation. So I still had to do work. It wasn't one of my longer or stronger recommendations between you and me, as opposed to this person who reached out and said, could you do this? Here's specifically what I'd like you to mention. And also, could you include this? It made it very easy. I wrote 2 quick paragraphs. It's exactly what she wanted. And I was happy to do it because I knew that I was giving her the value that I'd also gotten from her. Just a reminder, LinkedIn recommendations and endorsements are great. They're not something you have to do all the time. You don't have to keep it front and center. Maybe we should think about it quarterly. Who do I want to endorse? Do I need to get endorsed for new skills? For example, if you are graduating, if you've turned the corner on a job, if you have things you want to emphasize as your time goes on in a job you're in, please don't hesitate to reach out. And that includes to me. I won't offer Ron on his behalf, but I'll offer myself. The kinds of things I do for mentees I will look at your work characteristics. Do you show up? Do you participate? Are you prepared for meetings? And that includes things that in the course review meetings, when we have office hours, I'm happy to be able to provide those perspectives on everybody. There's only one reference, and that was answering how do you find endorsements? Because it's so hard you have to remember to go to the skills and blah, blah, blah. Because if you search for endorsements, you don't get it. You have to know where to look. I am going to stop there and ask Ron for comments.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I think this for me was a very useful learning lesson. I'm quite sure others gained something as well. Yeah, it's interesting. I have done some endorsing. It's interesting. I don't remember in your questionnaire at the beginning whether you had asked us whether we had endorsed somebody. It was more about our own things because I have done endorsing and I can see the real value for somebody who certainly is in the workforce and is seeking that this is definitely something that's valuable. And also someone like in what we do is where there's a professional contribution we're making and these endorsements can be valuable along the way. Yeah, so that was very helpful for me and I trust it was helpful for the others.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I meant to point out, I'm in a group where I think the last time I did a lot of endorsements was like almost a year ago, because it was the thing we were doing several times when we were helping people with profiles. Who else has comments? You can unmute and jump in if you have a question or a comment you want answered. Or not.
I actually have a question.
Sure. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome. Chelsea's first time here on Mentor Time, so we love to have new people attend. Okay, the floor is yours, Chelsea.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is, so with recommendations on LinkedIn, there is an option to send out a request directly.
Yes.
But then for endorsements, is there an option for that? I don't think I came across it, but maybe there is another way. So maybe direct message would be the best way to, I guess, request for endorsements.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Chelsea. I didn't go into that level of detail. You can you do send a request to someone to write you a recommendation. What the person whose direct message I showed you, who gave me what I needed for the recommendation, DM'd me and said, I know you just got the request. Here's what I'd like you to cover, because the request allows you to put it in there, but I appreciated her specifying it because sometimes it gets away from you. You don't realize it's sending it already. Same thing with endorsing. Here's my comment on endorsing, though. Here's a strategy that you use differently. You can go endorse people for what you think they might want to be endorsed for. So I could recommend you, I could choose some skills for you, Chelsea, 3 or 4 that I know would help you, because I don't need to get. And then once you've done that, then you can reach out easily and say, in a DM, would you please endorse me for these 3 skills? So there's no way in the skills list for endorsing requests the way there is for recommendations. Does that answer what you were looking for? Yep, great.
Yes, Sue, I think that's exactly the question I had, and you gave more information than I thought I would get from asking this question. So thank you so much.
It also lets me clarify in a capsule what the difference is. Thanks for asking it, Chelsea. That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else? Ron?
Yeah, just while you two were talking, I'm thinking and listening to the answer and so on. And it occurred to me that there's an opportunity, and I don't know what you think about this, Sue, but it's difficult when you've been asked to be a reference for someone, a referee. And so here you are, you're asked to comment on someone who's being considered for a position. And so I understand the laws in the States and so on. It's difficult and so on. And I haven't had it happen to me for a while, but I'm thinking of the last time it happened. You're dealing with the sort of the individual reasonably well because you agreed to offer a reference. And then you have these skills, and essentially that's what you're doing, is you're doing an endorsement or not. Because I do know that in one of the individuals that I was asked to comment on, I actually had to provide a negative comment, which is challenging because you're dealing with a person's career and all the rest of it. But the question was asked, and unless you decide that you're going to be oblique or not answer, I prefer not to answer that question. Is a big answer. And so on. But I could see a role where LinkedIn would play. And in other words, hey, this person has applied to a position there. Would you mind going and commenting on the individual because this is the areas where this person has expressed that they have capabilities, etc. So you could potentially do it via the LinkedIn profile. And then that would be an interesting spot to do that kind of thing. And it just, I don't know, it probably isn't a general practice, but it sounds like it would work.
Yeah,
Probably
I
has
agree
been-
with Chelsea. We both think that's a great idea. And again, it's a way to target specific things that you want to have highlighted, because when people looking at your profile for hiring may actually will probably read those. There's a lot of recruiters who say now the conventional wisdom in the US marketplace, meaning the LinkedIn experts I hear from, oh, you have to have at least one active, up-to-date recommendation every few months. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, not in my world. It's really hard in global health to get, you all are busy. And there's no reason. Yes, Mark wrote a recommendation saying how great I am way back in 2007. That doesn't carry any weight now. But certainly Claudia, who wrote one as someone, she took the first course and had been in other webinars with Ron and me. She wrote that in 2022. That's still a strong recommendation. It's not that old because I'm still working in that same business. Yeah, but I think you make an important point. Again, it's what you have in your control on your side of the conversation that can help you. Anybody else? Nada. Yes, I thought I saw you.
Thank you. For me, I just want to add that it may be logical to ask someone to have a recommendation for a scholarship for work, but maybe it seemed difficult to ask him endorsement for LinkedIn. Maybe he is underestimate his words, or so that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe it's difficult to ask someone to endorse me, but the party idea, it's a good way to ask a recommendation for someone.
Yeah. Again, I know that most of us don't feel comfortable asking for a recommendation unless we really need it. We know that it can be thought of as burdensome. I know that there are language challenges and bandwidth challenges across the globe. That's not easy either. But I also am aware that people like you want to know, what can you do? You want, Nada, you and others are here because you want to learn how much you can do to keep your visibility out there. I'm really happy that you like the LinkedIn endorsement party, that you can endorse some friends, and then you have a chance to reach out to them. Endorsements are a little bit easier, even though it's in a way harder to find, because they don't have to do much. You give them 3 to 4 things, and they just go click, click. You can even give them the direct link to your profile, and they at least just scroll down to skills. So thanks very much for that. Stephanie, you have your hand raised.
Yes. So you were just talking about endorsements that were recent and what you would consider to be older endorsements, and just recommendations in general through LinkedIn and otherwise. What is considered timely in terms of up to date versus after X period of time, you would say, oh, I would consider that an older recommendation?
For recommendations, I think if it's something where it's a person you've worked with in the last 2 to 3 years, think about it in terms of our jobs. Even 5 years ago, the work many of us were doing is very different from what we've grown into now. But I don't see any reason to take recommendations off. I left marks there partly because I had forgotten it was, I had in the back of my mind, I always remember that it's there, but I didn't realize till I was working on this last week. And I thought, oh, yeah, that was way back. I think you need to think about for recommendations. Is there something you're transitioning to or aiming to move into where you want to capture someone who's worked with you recently? And recently can be the last 2 years. I did have a hard and fast rule when I was still at my company 10 years ago when I retired, that I would not write a recommendation for anybody that reached out to me that I hadn't worked with in the last year, because I couldn't comment on their work. So I had IT people reaching out. I had someone who was in the survey research group reach out. One of them, I felt it was within a year, I felt like I could write a recommendation, but for others, I would say to them, I don't do that. And in retrospect, I could have offered endorsements. Those weren't even big way back then. They were just beginning to come up. So in terms of endorsements, LinkedIn used to have endorsements stacked. So the most endorsements would be the first thing you'd see. So mine was, and they always put it 99 plus. So if you got to 100 endorsements, you were at the top of the list. So I always, at that time, always had public health, global health, evaluation. Those were the top ones that people would endorse me for. I went through my skills list in December a year and a half ago when we did this, or 2 years ago. And there's a lot there that I don't need there anymore, but there's no cost to it, especially now that LinkedIn gives you 100 skills, not 50, because you used to have to adjust that if you change jobs. So I wouldn't worry about it, because what you're doing now is linking your skills to your job experience. And that's what recruiters are looking for. That's what connections are looking for. Oh, Stephanie worked in bioterrorism. Oh, she did it at 4 different jobs at CDC. She has a depth of experience. So it's a quick snapshot. But in all likelihood, they're not getting to that before they read through your profile or your resume. So they're already seeing it and they're primed for it. Again, I think the skills have been increased because it's like the ATS. It's an easy way for LinkedIn to have a database to sell to people, to say, click on these categories and find your candidate and pay us $2,000 a month for a sales navigator or whatever. It costs a lot of money. Does that answer your question, Stephanie?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Ron, any comments?
No, I think you covered it. Like I said, once again, I'm a little bit, because of my LinkedIn expertise is lower there, but it once again is more about, for me, because my endorsements and so on, I've done, like I said, a few on LinkedIn, but mostly it's been, for me, has been paper-based or telephone-based. And I'm dating myself, I'm afraid. Except that I have done, like I said, some on LinkedIn.
Nada says those are good too. That we have to realize our life has been transitioning the last few years, and it doesn't matter how old you and I are, we're always going to have stuff to transition because of that. Nada's going to report back with her feedback after she tries out the different strategies from today. I will ask if there's any either last comments on the topic today or any burning questions that people wanted to have answered, because there's a few minutes left.
I do have a question, but it's not specifically on recommendations or
Nope.
endorsements. So I
That's
will
fine.
let anyone.
You're fine for that, Sheila, especially because you couldn't
Oh,
ask
okay.
anything in office hours the other day. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So now that you're speaking about LinkedIn, I saw that they've introduced the get verified button or tick or something. And I tried to get verified, but I was worried about all the information they were asking because I had, I think, to attach a scan of my passport and details. And I found it a bit too, like I would be giving a lot of personal information away. I know that maybe in the terms and conditions, they're saying they don't keep the information, but I was still hesitant to give that information. And I was wondering if anyone here has had that experience and how they navigated that.
You raise a good point, and this has been a discussion I've heard about for the last few months. In the US, getting verified for me was very easy because the company that I didn't have to scan my driver's license, which is what they first wanted you to do and send it in. And like you, I wasn't going to do it. They now use Clear, which is a company that has a database and has access to a US government database where I'm already cleared for pre-check and global entry. So when I finally did it a couple months ago, it was easy. I am not comfortable. Let me back up. Being verified, there's a lot of people like you who are very skeptical. I don't think it means anything except that they have it right next to and below your name. And I'm so annoyed about that. Look, that should not be, but they're doing this because they're getting so many of us reporting Sheikh Hamdan Ramasi, who keeps in this, they keep impersonating with the same headshot, this sheikh from, and it's just horrible harassment messages, even though it's things like, hello, dear. I don't think men realize how affronting that is when I open my email messaging and see that. It just feels terrible. Really? Thank you, Nada, for agreeing. So please don't worry about getting verified. I think you need to be careful. We know that LinkedIn has been quite good with its security, and anything that has an HTTPS logon means it's a locked site and it's hard to get through. But we all know that's going to be a problem. We have to balance what's coming with AI and all the people who are I'm hearing about Amazon book authors who've just introduced their books, and suddenly there's a workbook with an AI version of their name and their headshot on there. So we know that's going to be a problem too. But you are not, this is not your government and this is not your company that you work for. You do not owe them your information. So you're right to be skeptical. You're not the only one, you're one of many. So hopefully that helps reassure you. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I understand your feelings and I wouldn't have done it. I didn't do it when they first wanted a driver's license a year ago in the US. And I finally looked at it a couple months ago, clicked it and said, okay, this is a level I can deal with. Ron, do you have comments on verification?
Yeah, every time there are security breaches, and they happen everywhere. And so far, from my experiences, banks have still seemed to have the best security protocol, but governments are getting hacked, everything. Yeah, I get nervous about when somebody wants digital information and store it in a database that I don't have control over. And I can't go in and adjust it. Yeah, that's where my head's at. I'm more able to, I guess I'm more ready to put my information out there for certain types of things, even purchases online and so on. But it's a scary place out there only because there's been so much hacking going on. And I think with AI, I'm suspecting that the AI, the dark web and other aspects of it, the AI tools are going to be amazing tools for the criminal element.
Yeah.
So
they already are. They already
I didn't, yeah, and I don't want to be doom and gloom about it, but it's more for me, it's just that caution flag that says, if you want my information, I don't know, I got to have a really good confidence that the security protocol is exceptional and beyond exceptional.
I hope that reassures you, Sheila. Don't rush into it. I understand your concerns and hold on to it.
Yeah, it does. But I did notice that LinkedIn has this thing where they've been sending me a lot of joining LinkedIn premium messages.
Yeah.
And like even with this verification thing, they would say, yeah, verified accounts get X percentage views or recruiter views than unverified accounts. And I think that has been their selling point, but I'm still not sure about giving my details.
They don't say which recruiters. We don't know how they're giving.
Yeah.
That's what LinkedIn is not transparent about a lot. They have a lot of our data and they won't give it back to us. In fact, we've created their platform. We brought all of our friends into it, just like Facebook. So I'm not sure. There's been some debate among the experts in LinkedIn, and I'll ask Brenda and Ken and Mindy when I see them again if they know anything about how and whether premium's really getting more views. They just want to sell you premium, which is also what they're trying to push us into. So I would wait on all of that. Don't feel like you're missing out, because in actual fact, especially in global development, most of the recruiters who pay to be on LinkedIn are not the people looking for people like me and you and Ron to fill these jobs. There aren't a lot of global development recruiters paying $5,000 a month or whatever it is to have the recruitment fancy stuff. So move cautiously. I'll see what I can find out about that though, Sheila. All right, we are out of time, so I'll ask Ron to close the meeting, please.
Thank you very much, Sue, for this great talk. Once again, I get to be one of the students, and I appreciate that. And I trust I offered some useful comments to folks based on my perspectives. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us today on Mentor Time. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks for our next session.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll be back in Canada by then. I'll be in a different time zone, and my whole world will be upside down because I'll be back in Canada.
Back in weather.
Back in weather, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all.